The bright studio lights of Ireland's Got Talent glowed across the massive stage as a small, thin boy slowly stepped forward, his slippers tapping nervously against the polished floor. He came from the crowded streets of Cebu City, where life was hard and every day felt like a fight for survival. His shirt was worn, his hair slightly messy, and he kept his eyes down as if afraid to look directly at anyone. The audience noticed his simple appearance and a low wave of whispers spread through the hall, some curious, some doubtful. But the boy kept walking, holding an old microphone that had scratches along the handle, as if it had lived many lives before reaching his hands. When he finally stopped at the center of the stage, he took a slow breath, trying to steady the trembling in his fingers. The judges sat before him, Maria O'Donnell, Sean Riley, and Clara Byrne, each sensing the nervous energy surrounding him. Maria leaned slightly forward, her expression softening as she stared at the fragile boy. Her voice came gentle and warm when she asked, "Are you okay, sweetheart?" The boy nodded once, barely lifting his head. His voice was so soft that the microphone almost swallowed it when he said, "I'm from Cebu. I want to help my mama." Those simple words cut through the murmurs in the audience and settled into a deep silence. Maria's eyebrows pulled together with concern, and Sean shifted in his seat, his attention completely locked on the boy. Clara's eyes glistened as she recognized the weight behind his tiny voice. The boy swallowed hard, his throat tight, trying not to show how scared he felt. He had never seen a stage this big, never stood before so many eyes, and yet something inside him, a flicker of hope, kept him from running away. Behind him, the giant LED screens glowed softly, almost like they were waiting for his story to unfold. The boy took another breath, his chest rising and falling too fast. He looked at the audience for the first time, and though the faces blurred together, he felt the pressure of every gaze. His legs shook a little, and he held the microphone tighter, afraid it might slip. Still, he didn't move. He stayed standing, because he didn't come here for himself. He came for the mother who washed clothes by hand back in Cebu, the mother who whispered prayers every night. In that moment, the judges saw it clearly, this wasn't just a performance. This was a boy carrying his whole world on his shoulders, hoping this stage might open a door that had always been closed to him. The moment the soft guitar intro of Hotel California floated through the air, the boy from Cebu closed his eyes as if he were stepping into a different world. The lights dimmed slightly, creating a warm golden glow around him, but he didn't seem to notice any of it. His breathing slowed, his shoulders relaxed, and for a brief second, the trembling in his hands faded. Then his voice emerged. Gentle at first, like a whisper carried by the wind, but filled with a depth and honesty that nobody in the audience expected. The judges straightened in surprise. Maria's lips parted slightly, her eyes widening in disbelief as the sound of his voice spread across the room. It was soft yet powerful, fragile yet strong, as if every note carried memories of hardship, sleepless nights, and dreams too big for the tiny house he came from. The audience leaned forward, stunned by the purity in his tone. His voice had cracks, real, emotional cracks, not from lack of skill but from a lifetime of struggles that had shaped him long before he ever set foot on a stage. With each line he sang, it felt like he was revealing pieces of his soul. When he reached the chorus, the small boy's voice rose with a force no one expected from someone so delicate. Maria placed a hand over her heart as tears began forming in her eyes. Sean blinked several times and shook his head slowly, whispering something that sounded like disbelief. Clara pressed a hand against her mouth, trying to hold back the tears that were threatening to fall. His performance didn't feel rehearsed, it felt lived. Every word carried a meaning deeper than the song itself. It was as if his pain, his hopes, and his silent battles were merging with the melody, creating something raw and breathtaking. The audience, who moments earlier had doubted him, now sat frozen, mesmerized by the boy who had risen from poverty and turned his life story into music. By the time he reached the last verse, his voice broke slightly, not out of weakness but out of emotion too heavy for a child to hold inside. A soft gasp echoed from the audience as people realized they were witnessing something rare, something pure and unforgettable. The boy opened his eyes on the final line, meeting the gaze of the judges for the first time during the performance, and in that single moment, all three judges felt it. They were not just listening to a song. They were listening to a soul speaking through music, and it left them breathless. As the last trembling note of the song drifted into silence, the entire studio seemed to stop breathing. The boy from Cebu stood motionless, his small chest rising and falling too quickly as he tried to catch his breath. The microphone shook slightly in his hand. For a moment, there was no applause, no whispers, no movement, just a thick, powerful silence hanging in the air like the calm before a storm. Then Maria pushed her chair back, her eyes overflowing, and without hesitation she slammed her hand on the golden buzzer. The sound exploded through the hall, echoing like thunder. Instantly, gold confetti burst from above, raining down in shimmering waves. The boy flinched, startled, looking up as if unsure whether he was dreaming. When he realized what was happening, his small hands flew to his mouth, and his knees wobbled as tears filled his eyes. The audience erupted, rising to their feet with cheers so loud they shook the stage. Faces in the crowd glowed with emotion, some crying, some screaming, all overwhelmed by the miracle they had just witnessed. Maria stood and hurried toward the stage steps, wiping her tears as she walked. Clara couldn't hold back anymore. Tears streamed freely down her face as she covered her trembling lips. Sean, usually the toughest judge, blinked hard, his eyes glossy with emotion he couldn't hide. They all came toward him together, like three adults running to comfort a child who had just shown the world his heart. When Maria reached him, she wrapped him in a warm embrace, whispering something no one could hear over the crowd's roar. Clara knelt beside them, gently wiping his tears with a tissue, her hands shaking from the intensity of the moment. Sean placed a comforting hand on the boy's shoulder, leaning down and saying loudly enough for him to hear, "Your voice, your courage, the world needs to hear you, son." The boy cried harder, overwhelmed by joy, disbelief, and relief all at once. Confetti clung to his hair and shirt, sparkling under the bright stage lights like tiny pieces of a new future falling around him. The audience chanted in unison, "Cebu boy! Cebu boy! Cebu boy!" Their voices filled the studio with a sound that felt like a promise. His life would never be the same after tonight. As the golden rain continued to fall, the boy closed his eyes, whispering a trembling thank you, and for the first time he allowed himself to believe that dreams could reach even the poorest streets of Cebu.